For more than a decade, FTI has strived to become the leader in the aftermarket performance transmission and converter industry. We've joined forces with McLeod driveline components under the leadership of Top Fuel Funny Car pilot Paul Lee, and now have a larger distribution network, more resources, and more power. Come see us in the pits and ask how you can join the FTI family. It's not cheating, it is the competitive edge.
This is WFO Radio.
Hey everybody, WFO Radio is on the air. Joe Castello here with you. Super excited to speak with you guys today. We've got Alan Reinhart, the voice of the NHRA, going to be joining us just seconds from now. Also going to have Freddie Turza from VP Racing Fuels, going to educate me and anybody else who wants the knowledge a little bit about VP Lubricants, what's going on over there with Camry Caruso's machine, and VP Racing Fuels for your car, and some of the great products they've got. It's going to be educational. By the way, Freddie used to work for Bill Grumpy Jenkins, and so we're not going to let him escape without a story or two about the Grump. I know a lot of folks are logging on here today, and honestly, we all in the drag racing community have a very heavy heart, and we lost two just massive personalities in the sport. Dave McClelland, Big Mac, who really, for me, was, he and Steve Evans were, many of the reasons that I got into broadcasting, let alone drag racing. They did such a great job for so many years. It's very difficult, very challenging. And then John DiBartolomeo, Johnny D. Oh my goodness. Just a nightmare scenario for those that loved Johnny D. And I saw him at Charlotte a couple of weeks ago, and we had a conversation. Johnny D had done so many great things for me personally, and it's really tough. This is going to be a tough one. And then we're going to bring on Alan. We're going to talk about their lives, and we're going to talk about divisional racing this past week and all of that. Later on in the week, we're going to do a little more color on Big Mac, but it's tough. This is the more people you know, the closer you get with people, the more you really get to know them, and then the life cycle happens and they pass away in time or natural causes or not. And it's just very, very challenging. And we're going to do our best here on the show to pay respects to them and also live by what we deem to be, very important. Like, what would they want? And the answer is for us to go on and talk drag racing and have fun and enjoy our day. And we're definitely going to do that a little bit later on in the show. I did mention Freddie from VP going to be on the show. So super excited about that. We'll tell you about VP Racing Fuels during that segment, but I will tell you about the people who make it possible for me to go WFO. Phillips Connect. Super excited. Tomorrow, we're going to have Erica Enders on the show. Erica's going to be on at 12 noon. Erica's going to join us, but so is Jim Epler of Phillips Connect, and who basically put it all together. It's kind of a great program. Super excited to have Jim Epler and Erica Enders on the same show. And what could happen is we might be able to get them on at the same time, because remember, Erica was going to drive Jim's funny car before she went down the career of Pro Stock. Like, wouldn't that be great? But none of that has anything to do with Phillips Connect. What has everything to do with Phillips Connect is the fact that there are millions of trucks and trailers rolling over the road, and they have to be kept safe. The people around them have to be kept safe, the loads, the scheduling. And the best way to do that now is through staying connected. So Phillips Connect is how that happens. Countless internet-connected sensors monitoring your vehicles and your loads. And you should go to phillips-connect.com to find out more information. But it's going to be cool. Jim Epler, who pretty much started it all, and also was, first to 300 on WFO Radio. Total Seal Piston Rings, the leader in ring seal technology. TotalSeal.com. Pro Stock is back in Epping in a couple of weeks. We got Memorial Day this weekend, but I will be recording a new episode of Hidden Horsepower later on today, so catch up on the podcast. But really, you don't need the podcast to know that you should go to Total Seal for piston rings. It was Matt Smith just days ago here on WFO Radio, an unsolicited endorsement. The only rings that he uses. He's pretty good. He's won some stuff. TotalSeal.com. FTIperformance.com. Check out the website, find out more information. And FTI Performance Racing Transmissions, converters, transmissions, big money bracket racers, .90 racers, anytime where consistency is vital, they are in the lead. But also big power like Top Dragster and Top Sportsman, Pro Modified, using FTI Performance transmissions. So check them out at FTIperformance.com. A little later on in the show, I'll tell you about Marvin Rodak's coffeeandgrills.com, Frank Hawley's Drag Racing School, and samtech.edu. But now let's go out to the voice of the NHRA, who's somewhere in America, as he is on a 5-week journey out there traveling across the long, lonesome highway, Mr. Alan Reinhart. 7 weeks, not 5 weeks. 7 weeks. And he's in a hotel room in a Motel 6 somewhere in America. What's up, Alan? How are you?
Oh, come on. I'm Hilton Diamond, baby. This is a Hampton.
Yeah.
This isn't a Motel 6.
I'm just kidding. I am Hilton Diamond as well. I love Hilton Diamond, especially the parking spot up in front. I once asked them, it's like, how do you know? And they're like, oh, it's, never mind. I'm not going to say that just in case anybody's not Diamond. They want to steal the parking spot. Never mind. So what's up, Alan? Tough show today. We've dealt with these kind of things in the past. Two really Mac was just a hero to me. You worked with Mac. Johnny D, personal friend to both of us. And we're talking about them both passing on in the same day at the same time. It's just brutal.
Yeah, I mean, just start with Dave McClelland. Obviously, when I was younger and when I was getting into it, he was the voice of NHRA. He also, he was the guy I watched on TV on the American Sports Cavalcade and on some of the NHRA Today Show stuff and some of the other things. I remember, I don't know that it was the first time that I met him, but the first time I was actually working a national event. I was the local track announcer at Phoenix, and just like today, right? If there's a local track announcer that's got some chops and wants to come up and wants to work on a Thursday or Friday and get involved and kind of see, then we welcome them. We're always looking, for the next. There's going to be a need coming down the road, and that's kind of the position I was in. I was very young and was the track announcer, and so I'm the guy that's filling in and doing stock and super gas on Thursday and Friday, and got a little one-on-one time with McClelland, and he's like God. And he says, "What are you looking to do in the business, kid?" And I said, "I'm after your job." And wow. I'll never forget, he said, "If you were good enough to do it, you'd already have it." And I thought, wow, well, that wasn't what I was expecting. And then spoke very candidly about, the business and getting involved and getting and doing stuff and what you need to do and what you need to expect and those kind of things, and was very helpful. And, I think back now and I'm thinking to myself, what a punk. And I was, but he, kind of understood. And I think, a little bit, when I meet people now, if somebody's very ambitious and somebody wants to tell me, hey, look, my goal is I want to be on TV. I want to do great. Here's the roadmap. It's not easy, but it's certainly there. And then over the years when we worked together, one of the other things that was a really big break for me, this was a couple of years later, when Phoenix had what became known as the lane out. They had replaced the concrete launching pad on the racetrack just literally weeks before the national came up, and it was coming apart. When cars were doing burnout, chunks were coming up and they're throwing rocks at everything, and they decided Saturday afternoon, done. We can't race like this. It's not happening. So they postponed the race. They were going to come in starting literally Sunday morning. They had a crew come in Sunday morning, jackhammered out the whole starting line, put down all new concrete, and they were going to come back and race the next day. And the announcing staff at that event was myself, Richard Schroeder, Mike Lewis, and Mac. And the four of us are standing there, and I'm fly on the wall. I'm still really the new kid on the block. And Schroeder had something he was doing with his wheel stander or with a Super Chevy deal, if I'm not mistaken. Mike Lewis had a commitment someplace that he would do it. And so they're literally talking about, well, what about this guy, or could we call this guy, or could we maybe bring in this guy, or could we? And in the middle of the conversation, and I'm literally just kind of standing there like this, and McClelland looks at me and he says, "You going to be here next week?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he looked at Mike Lewis, who at the time was the guy that scheduled all the announcers for NHRA, and he said, "You guys do what you got to do. Me and the kid will take care of it. Don't worry about it. We got this handled." And I felt like that was a real, I made it moment. I've been accepted into the family. And McClelland called the pros, and I basically called every other car that went down the racetrack, as well as doing some top end stuff and kind of got thrown into the deep end of the pool. But the fact that he stood up for me basically and said, "Me and this kid here, we'll handle it. Don't worry about it. You guys go take care of stuff." And that was a pretty important moment for me. And over the years, obviously we've talked so much. He offered so much guidance and always helpful. Chad Reynolds on Bank Shift wrote a very nice story about that's up now, and said that McClelland was one of the only guys he ever met that would tell you every secret. It's not like, he's after my stuff. I got to, let's push this kid back. Let's keep this kid down. Let's do that. McClelland was always very open, very helpful, very, here's what you need to do. Here's what you do well. Here's what you need to work on. Here's the kind of stuff you need to do. And I have tried to kind of pass that along, to guys, because I just remember how helpful it was for me, the punk, who literally said, "I want your job." And for him to be so open and so helpful to me over the years, and I try to do the same thing now when I meet announcers that are kind of coming up the path, as it were, to try to help out where I can, because obviously I'm not going to be around forever. Nobody is. Father Time is undefeated. So, but for McClelland, 85 when he passed this last week, and for all the things that he did, from racetrack management to working in television to doing news and sports and radio and working for NHRA and working for various publications and doing he had not just a golden voice, but he had a golden touch. The things that he did were successful, and I think he had his integrity, I think, is unquestioned. If he was a salesman and he came to you and he said, "This will help, this, I can help you sell, I can help, this is a program," that people believed him, and because he was telling the truth. And so, I think that's always going to be part of his legacy, not just, the recognizable voice that 200 years from now, people will be watching the old drag racing stuff and the old things, and they're still going to recognize that voice.
Okay, Alan. So, for those out there, we're on the internet, and the internet is an amazing thing, but it is also imperfect. And since Alan is in a hotel, the Wi-Fi system there is a little sketchy, and there's nothing I can do about him being a slightly blurry. If Alan wants to try to switch to your air card, if you feel like you've got pit stop timing on that, we can do that. But of course, just as I say that, it comes in, he's gone. Okay. And, we're going to talk about Johnny D, and I want to pay as much respect as I can and do everything the right way. The problem is, sometimes the internet, the guy outside with the lawn blower doesn't understand what we're trying to do. And so Alan is going to switch up to his air card instead of the hotel Wi-Fi. And I'm going to reinforce what Alan just said and just give my own story. When I started WFO Radio, I wanted credibility, obviously. And so I had been working at NASCAR radio, and XM satellite radio, and when the two companies merged, I was kind of one of the 180 people that was let go on the XM side, and started WFO as a podcast and a live stream. And in that time, I started to, reach out to different people. In WFO, we had probably 10 listeners. There was no Facebook at that time, really, Twitter and all that to promote what we were doing. Every one of our listeners then was totally organically grown. And I reached out to Big Mac to do an interview, and he came on WFO radio, and we talked about his career, and we talked about how he got started, and it was audio only. And it's a podcast that's, it's out there somewhere, but the feeds have since been destroyed and hard drives have died. And it was amazing, though. He was great and he was gracious. And it was one of those things where, for me, they say you should never meet your heroes. And there's a lot of truth to that. You should never meet your heroes. But Big Mac and Steve Evans and those guys were heroes to me. I was always interested in broadcasting. I always liked that deal. And, we've talked about talk radio and such over the years. But these guys were the voices that I heard at the Gator Nationals every year since 1980 with my dad. They were the epitome of professionalism. When I thought of professionalism, I didn't think of Al Michaels and Do You Believe in Miracles? I thought of Big Mac. And those guys, they were my introduction to sports broadcasting, the thing that I cared about. And oh, by the way, carried the sport from like 1970 to 2003. Alan is back.
Better?
Oh my gosh. You want to? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back, and everything you just said a minute ago, you're going to say it again, except you'll be clear. No, we're not going to do it. We're just going to reinforce it. But this is definitely much better, and I'm glad we took the time. Guys, if you're out there, it's a live show, and we do our best. Next thing, Alan, you got to go kill the guy with the leaf blower. Can you go get him?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm on the 5th floor and I'm wearing earbuds. I don't know.
No, it's all right. It's a
better?
very.
Here we go. I'll do the rest of the show like this.
No, it's not. It's not any better. Listen, you've already made a marked improvement. Let's keep going before your time runs out on your air card. That not giving secrets away thing, that's very important. I try to do that right now. When there's someone who wants to know something, you tell them, and if they can do it, that's good for them. And if they can do all of the things, that's great for them, and it's great for the sport. Because the sport needs talented people. I looked at Dave McClelland as a deity. I never got to hang with those guys. I did one interview with Big Mac, Steve Evans. I never got to interview. I'm good friends with Cameron, which is something that is fortunate, and I get to know a lot about it. But the idea that you got to work with them and see the methodology and see that behind the scenes, that must have been incredible.
It was. And the fact that, they basically were inventing it as they go. There was no drag racing on TV until those guys started doing it. And a lot of the, even kind of the format things and the things we do today are things that they developed. They tried different things back in the day and came up with, this seems to work best. A lot of the stuff they did also was post-produced. The first ever live broadcast of drag racing, I was standing next to Steve off camera when the infamous Phoenix 92 event, and it really was, when he said it's a dusty, blustery day in Arizona and we're making a little bit of history. So, being able to be in that era and kind of watch from very up close and personal and get to know some of that stuff, I think has helped me immensely. But, one of the things that you really learn in the business is, the number of people that are so afraid that, oh my God, this guy's after what I've got, this guy wants my stuff, and the number of people that aren't willing to help somebody who's climbing a ladder, somebody who maybe just got out of school, or maybe who just, decided that, hey, this is something I want to at least look into and see if there's something. But the number of people that aren't willing to help because they're afraid, this guy's after what I got, this guy or gal or whatever it is. And McClelland was never like that. He had enough confidence in his ability and that, he would help anybody that was coming up the ladder, because someday somebody was going to need to replace him, and someday somebody was going to need to take over. And he also felt that if he was the guy that was here, and then he had this guy and this guy and this guy that were all kind of working on the same team, if the team was better, he would look better. They would all look better. If the team was better, they would all be better. So he was always trying to just help the team get better. And that's one of the things that, and as I said before, I tried to this day to do it. When there's a new announcer, whether it's a local track guy, whether it's somebody that, comes out and does 2 or 3 events, if they want some advice, I'm more than happy to give. Sometimes even unsolicited. I'll, tell somebody, hey, look, for what it's worth, here's something that I noticed, here's something you might want to think about. Sometimes it's well received, sometimes it's not. But I think that, helping the next generation come along is important. And Steve and Dave both certainly were very helpful to me, and I'm trying to continue that legacy if I can.
Well, you've been helpful to me, certainly. There are things that you cannot possibly know. And knowing that you cannot know those things is a big step in the right direction. But not everybody knows that. And so you've been very open with situational knowledge in drag racing in my 10 years now of working on the tour. And I thank you for that. And it's been pretty amazing to think of the connection, right? Like, Big Mac, Fry, Reinhart, like it's a very, very short list of people who have been the voice of the National Hot Rod Association at national events.
Yeah, don't forget Bernie Partridge. He was
Bernie
he was
Partridge,
on
the
that chain
OG.
as well. And And yeah, I think I'm kind of flattered to be on that list. I look at those guys and think I'm not sure my name belongs on the same list with those guys.
But you can tune a nitro car according to Austin Coyle, and so that's Big Mac.
Well,
he won the March meet, by the way.
Bob Fry could not tune a nitro car. I promise you, Bob Fry could not tune a nitro car.
Well, we haven't seen you do it. Austin Coyle just thinks you can do it, so I wouldn't be against seeing that one day. But Big Mac won the March meet, though, right? Like this guy, he won journalism awards. You referenced that Chad from Bang Shift has got a great story. Mm-hmm. Dave Densmore has got a great story on Competition Plus as well. And of course, everybody is pouring out their thoughts and memories, and we will do a little of that later on in the week, guys. But just amazing. This guy covered the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald and won journalism awards. Just amazing stuff. He, ran racetracks, moved out west. He was the first NHRA director of communications. You think of how far that has all come. And as you said, those guys were building the plane as they were flying the plane.
That's exactly what they were doing. And, he was just, certainly he was in the right place at the right time, but he was also very sharp and, had such a memorable voice. I think that, the fact that he stuck with NHRA, and because you hear his voice and you're talking drag racing. It's like for so many years in the NASCAR world, whether you were TV, radio, whatever, if you heard Barney Hall, it's like, oh, that's NASCAR. And he was just synonymous with, the quarter mile sport. And, he will be a part of it forever. Things that he did and things that he was involved with, and projects that he worked on or initiated that we take for granted today. His fingerprints are all over the sport and will be forever.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate your opinion. On Thursday, I'm working on having a couple of people on that are going to talk about Mac from the TV side of things, because that's going to the Gator Nationals, of course, but I think he really, the voice and the presentation on television did so much for drag racing. You think of the golden era of, the 1980s to 2000, all those shows. That's what delivered the sport, kept it on par with NASCAR and IndyCar. Some would say larger. I think a sport is only as good as its broadcasters, honestly. Not to overinflate the importance of the jobs that we do, but a sport is only as good as its broadcasters. In the NFL, it's got the best in the business, obviously, the highest level sports broadcasters. Dave McClelland and Steve Evans could have easily done any sport that was out there. They chose drag racing. They loved drag racing. They were drag racing. And that's why our sport was perceived and was as big time as it got back then, because they were big time voices and personalities and doing it, like you said, making it up along the way. But Dave McClelland is not the only, in many ways, iconic loss that we got to talk about. John DiBartolomeo, the Puerto Rican dream. I remember my dad telling me about his bracket car at the 5-day bracket race, walking around in like the late 80s. He used to pit right behind the gas pumps at Moroso for the 5-day. Like, this guy's good, Joe. And years later, like up on my wall there, Drag Racing Edge magazine, he wrote the first bio piece on WFO and gave me my first like print pub for the podcast and became a friend. And we both saw him at Charlotte. And he was walking around and, he didn't look great. Definitely not. It was not himself. He was fighting cancer. And he told me things weren't great, but he walked and he moved like John DiBartolomeo, like himself. Johnny D, hey, there he is. And we've lost him. And I feel terrible for the family and the extended family, because he was genuine family to the Lucas Oil Series racer out there.
And he also was so multifaceted. I don't know how many people, especially casual fans, understand. He was a manufacturer. I mean, made parts, sold parts. That was a big part of his business. He was a very successful racer. I believe he's got 7 or 8 national event wins. He's got a bunch of divisional wins. He was certainly not an easy out if you pulled up next to him at the starting line. And that's something that he has passed along to both of his kids. They've both had, success on the drag strip as well. And in the magazine business, whether he was writing, whether he was editing, whether he was taking pictures, he was tremendously talented on a lot of different levels and had just he just had a lot going on in the sport, and he kind of like McClelland, everything that he did well, because he wasn't a guy that was willing to do something halfway. He wasn't a guy that was just going to, just phone it in or do enough to get by. And I'm so grateful that I got a chance to talk to him a little bit at Charlotte one-on-one, because over the years, he and I had a lot of discussions over the years, and we didn't necessarily always agree on everything. I mean, there were some times I had tremendous amount of respect for the man, but there were some times when, we would walk away from a discussion, and I think both of us were just going, man, that guy just doesn't get it. And the fact that getting to talk to him at Charlotte and see him again and understand, and I told him, flat out, that I'd always had a tremendous amount of respect for him, even though we didn't necessarily agree on stuff. That didn't mean, that personally I didn't think that he was a great guy. And I like people that are passionate, people that, if you have a different viewpoint, that's great. Let's talk about it. Let's debate it. But the fact that the last interaction that we had was positive, and I felt exactly like you did. He was, very thin and very, fighting cancer, but he also sounded to me very positive. That,
yes.
It's like, hey, we've got treatment going on, and we're gonna be okay, and that was part of why it was such stunning news when I heard yesterday that he had passed. But he was just, like I said, everything he did 100%, and did very well. And you could, all you'd have to do is read one of his opinion columns, and you understand how passionate he was about the sport, and how much that he wanted to offer his input on what he thought was the best way to improve it, which was almost exclusively focused on the experience for the sportsman racer, the experience for the little guy racer, and I don't mean any disrespect like that by that, but I think everybody understands. And that's something that, he was one of them. He walked the walk, he talked the talk, and he definitely was on their side. But just again, a tremendous loss.
Yeah, that one's very personal. And I don't want to overstate anything. Honestly, guys, I'm weird about dealing with death. It's a horrible thing. And I don't even know what to say, because there are so many people that I can't even imagine, let alone, Franklin and Christina, how they're dealing with John's passing, because he's a larger than life character. He was as real as they could get. He's racing the car, pitting the car, grabbing his camera, coming out to the starting line, shooting for the magazine, writing stories, working nonstop. Bobby Bennett's got a great story about him up on Competition Plus. Also, everybody paying tributes, but the work ethic, the desire for fun, all those things. He'd always laugh. I'd call him a Division I Hall of Famer. He'd say, "Oh, you're just saying I'm old." He would be very jealous of me because of South Florida and the sunshine. You too, probably because of the heat, because he was cold up there in Pennsylvania. Hated the cold. But, get out of there, John. Get out of there. I can't. That kind of, a lot of Northeasterners say the same things. He was a Northeasterner through and through. He had that style, and was a great driver. Interviewed him on the Parade of Champions, back-to-back Norwalk a couple of years ago. Guy got it done on the racetrack. You can't say enough about his talent and ability and passion for drag racing. Again, I didn't always agree because he was in a different place than I was and had experienced the different world of drag racing that he loved so much. And he was trying to kind of how do we get it back to where it was then? And the answer is, you can never go back. You can only go forward. And we're trying to, things are different now, obviously, in 100 different ways. But man, the guy had just so much energy and passion. And I just hate that he is not going to be able to be with us and enjoy us and help things go forward, because he's one of those guys, man, did everything. And who's the next guy who can do everything? And the answer is there's not a lot of them.
You're right. And I think, what you said, passion, I think is the word. He was very passionate about whether he was racing, whether he was writing, whether he was editing a magazine, whether he was trying to come up with a better mousetrap in, his parts business and the things that he did. He just had a passion to do whatever this task at the moment is to the best of his abilities. And his abilities, more often than not, were better than a whole lot of other people's abilities when all was said and done.
Well, and that, I believe, as we are figuring out, is the definition of drag racer. What you just said, whatever it is, it's not good enough. Whatever it is, as good as it is, it can always be better. And there will be nothing that stops us from accomplishing our goal of achieving better, whatever it is, always. And that is amazing, because that is the definition. The magazine, the photography, the technical articles, the racing with the family, all of those things. Johnny D, just so sad, and I feel so badly for the family. And go online, guys. There's announcements about celebrations of life and all of those things. Of course, we'll be paying tribute throughout the rest of the year as we can. But just a terrible situation. And on that note, though, like, what would Johnny D want us to do with this situation, Alan? I feel like talking a little drag racing and having fun and looking back at the weekend that would probably be his recommendation.
I think you're right. I think that, he was certainly passionate about it, whether he was talking about technical issues, whether he was talking about rules issues, whether he was talking about practices and procedures that he thought maybe should be changed. It was his passion, was to always go out there and do the best job he could and to try to make it better at the end of the day than it was when he got there at the start of the day.
So let's talk about Cecil County. And, I was watching a little bit on NHRA.TV. First of all, NHRA.TV, guys. If you're watching WFO, I know you already have NHRA.TV, right? Because you're the most diehard. These are the most diehard drag racing fans on the planet that watch WFO radio, because it's, it was hard to find, and you found it. And so there you go. But we had divisional racing from all around the country available for free on NHRA.TV. Galvin is in Indy. You're up there in Cecil County. We got stuff going on at the Motorplex. It was out of control. I watched very little because I was putting my own engine on an engine stand, because I aspire to be out there racing at some point, and I had to be doing it. But so give us the update from Cecil County. Obviously, Will Monroe at the front of our mind as well.
Yeah, it was just a wonderful event with one really bad run. And that was late in the day on Saturday afternoon. It was a 2-day event, Friday, Saturday event, when 2 super gas cars got together in the shutdown area, and Will Monroe got the worst of it. They transported him to local hospital. His family has been putting some updates and some stuff on Facebook, so you can get the information there. But just want to send our thoughts to him and his family as they kind of navigate through this. It was just a really nasty 2-car accident, and you hate seeing things like that happen. But as I said when I was calling the race, and he was about 145 miles an hour, 144 something at the finish line. After you watch, whether it's the alcohol cars, whether it's the pro cars at a national event, the sportsman cars don't look like they're really going that fast. But if you're going 144 miles an hour and you make contact with another car and you make contact with the wall, that is a bad situation. And so we'll just kind of keep him in our thoughts. And as I said, his family has been on Facebook with with updates as he goes through the procedure. And we just want to wish him the best, and hopefully that he recovers quickly.
Well, absolutely. You said it. Right, super gas rolls out, and people are thinking, oh, here come the slow cars. They're not slow by any stretch of the imagination. 135 miles per hour in the quarter mile, 135 is not slow. It's fast. And there are cars that are going 180, 185 in super gas. That is moving out, and just a very difficult situation. What I saw was very tough, and obviously to Will and his family and everyone involved, we got to learn always, can always be thinking of safety, because you just never know what's going to happen.
Well, and as I've said before, everybody that gets in the car understands what they're doing. And with the rules and the chassis manufacturers and all of the safety equipment and all the stuff, you make it as safe as you possibly can. But we're not playing with yarn balls. And when something happens and again, I believe he was going 144 miles an hour at the finish line, and contact between the 2 cars, when something happens at that rate of speed, it's happening in a hurry. Fortunately, the driver of the other car was able to climb out of his machine and walk away. Unfortunately for Will, he wasn't, but he's in recovery right now, and we've just got our fingers crossed for him that he makes it back hopefully very quickly. He's a young man, fairly. I honestly don't know his level of experience. I don't know if he came up through the junior stuff or not, but I know the guys that I've talked to have said that, even though he, hadn't been racing into big cars, he was very early 20s. He hadn't been racing obviously for 30 years, but he was a guy that when you came up against him, you better be game on or he was going to send you home. And I said this was, late in the day on Saturday, so he had already won 3 or 4 rounds by the time we got there. And it's just awful, no matter when it happens or who it happens to. But the reality of it is we are racing cars that go really fast, and when things go wrong, they can go really wrong in a hurry. Grateful that way more often than not, the drivers are able to climb out, walk away. It's unfortunate that this time the recovery is going to be a little bit longer, but we'll just keep thinking about him.
Absolutely. And Keith mentioning out there, and I want to emphasize this, that's why people need to support DRAW, the Drag Racing Association of Women, an organization that was founded in the wake of Daryl Gwynn's crash, and to support people in this situation, regardless of how much recovery they may have. Drag Racing Association of Women, they're located on the Midway. You definitely have to swing by there because they do so many good things. The racing, let's talk a little bit about that. Any highlights, anything you want to drive home? We got so many divisional races, guys. We're not going to give every result in every division because go to Drag Race Central, and we'll give a little plug for Rick Green and his site. DragRaceCentral.com has got everything, although I'm looking for Division 1 and I can't find that. But DragRaceCentral.com basically posts every round of racing that has happened over the course of the weekend. But what sticks out in your mind from this race?
Well, it was good to be named Stalba. That really sticks out in my mind.
Okay.
Not Tommy, but everybody else. Karen Stalba won Alcohol Dragster. She qualified number 1, had a brilliantly fast car. It was much warmer on Saturday than it was on Friday, but her car was incredible. And then she ran low ET of the event in the final round to beat Jackie. Paul Stalba, who is Karen and Tommy's son, won the upper age junior dragster category, and I believe it's 14 to 17 or 13 to 17, whatever the older kids are. And Emily Stalba, who is Paul's little sister, won the mid-range junior dragster title. So at the end of the day, the Stalba clan took home 3 trophies from there, and that's a pretty good day for the family. Tommy was the proud crew chief for the juniors and the proud cheerleader for his wife. He's not hands-on with the nitro car, but he takes care of the juniors, and he wasn't his best day at the office, and he's won 10 division championships, so he's certainly had his great days. But he was being the proud father watching, and it was kind of funny because Emily won first, and the way the day came down, just with various numbers of cars and categories and that kind of thing. When we got to after the cleanup, after the accident, we got back into business. They ran the top top alcohol dragster final. So then Karen won, and now the girls have won, and Paul hasn't run the final yet. He's in the final, but he hasn't run yet. And you got to know that he and his dad are both going, okay, we better do something here, because otherwise we're going to be hearing it from the girls forever. Hey, guy, want to see our trophies? Why don't you guys make dinner? Why don't you guys do the dishes? Why don't you guys wash the motor home? We're going to be busy because we've got our trophies that we got to get cleaned up with the trophy case. But he staged up in the final and had a 001 reaction time and was able to close the deal to make the third trophy for the Stalba. So that was definitely a good day for them. DJ Cox won Alcohol Funny Car, like Karen Stalba, number 1 qualifier. Had a really good car on Saturday, ran low ET of the event in the final round. And DJ, their DC Contracting, instrumental in building the racetrack and making it happen and making the racetrack what it is right now. So, he kind of defended his home turf, and that was pretty cool. Frank Aragona Jr. was back at the track and back in action.
Hey,
that was great.
there you go.
Yeah, and he looks good, sounds good, says done with this. Obviously going to have a follow-up somewhere down the road, but felt pretty good about that. And, overall, it was just it was a good day of drag racing except for that one run.
Yeah, well, good. That's good to know. and exciting. Of course, Memorial Day weekend this coming weekend. Great, kickoff to summer. Also a solemn holiday where we think about like how on earth did we get to this point here in the United States of America where we can do all this great stuff? And the answer is because many people gave their lives and sacrificed so that we could do it. So we will. It's a great day of racing. NHRA not on the schedule, and I'm okay with it, honestly, to get home and recharge and grill up and watch a little action. We seem to have knocked out everything the weekend before on the divisional side. And then the following week, we're going to get together and talk about Epping, but we're headed to the New England Nationals. Yes?
We're racing in Maple Grove this weekend.
Oh my gosh, you're racing in Maple Grove this weekend. There you go. Part of the 7-week
That's why I'm here, Joe. That's the reason I didn't go home is because I just went to the next race. But no,
this is the first race since the Koretsky takeover. First big points race.
Yeah, it's going to be the first NHRA event. The No Prep Kings were there a couple of weeks ago, just literally days after I think it was announced. But I went out to the racetrack today, and Kyle is out there personally working. And I don't mean like, hey, you guys do this, you guys do that. I mean sleeves rolled up and working. And he just chatted with him a couple of minutes, and he said that they had a list of things that they wanted to get completed before this event. And then they're coming right back in on Monday or Tuesday after the holiday and they got a list of things they want to do, but they are, doing some upgrades and, making a pretty big capital investment. And I say, Kyle personally is out there, sleeves rolled up and working. I've been in contact with Kenny a little bit. He's going to be up here later on in the week. And, they, when they closed the deal and bought the place, they knew walking in the door that, okay, we have made an investment in this facility, and this facility needs some capital improvements. And, I believe he's got a 5-year plan on a lot of the stuff that he's going to do, but it's not like we're going to do, one thing a year. We're going to get on it. We're going to get this stuff moving. And they've got a lot of stuff planned, and they have already got the ball rolling.
So on that, do you think it's good for me to apply pressure, like what our expectations are? Kid Chaos and Captain, they're friends, right? We can lean on them and explain that our expectations are very high. These guys are builders. They bought the track. They've got all this time before Maple Grove National, right? Should WFO apply positive reinforcement but pressure to get them to get things done, or should we just kind of sit back and see how it goes?
What is it that you're looking to get done?
Well, I don't know. I've got a big list of things. Like really what I would like is an observation area on the 1320 mark at Maple Grove. The track that I think has the best viewing ability for Drive the Stripe, 1320. You can watch them come down there and do all their top end driving stuff. That's what I would like a cool spot, though, not just like grass and a fence where 10 people can lean on the fence. I mean like a thing, man, a spot, a deal, a top end observation deck / beer barn / TV screen so we can watch and hear the announcer and see who's up on the screen so we can do a great episode of Drive the Stripe. That's my number one for Maple Grove.
Yeah, you can go for that. Won't bother me a bit.
No pressure, Kid Chaos. Let's do it.
Well, I was up here last week also, and so I basically have laid out the blueprints for my office, which, by the way, I'm not sharing. There will be, the Reinhart room.
I don't care if you share the blueprints, Alan. You don't have to share the blueprints.
Then there will be the peon announcers over there in the closet room.
We'll super glue you in there.
I'm lobbying already, but I'm lobbying for me because I don't care that much about the rest of you guys.
Yeah, we know all this already. This is old news. This is old news. Alan Reinhart, we know the deal. It's very contrary to all the stuff you said a few minutes ago about Dave McClelland, but that's okay. As long as things get better.
Yeah,
and they will.
They are, first and foremost, they want to make sure that people that come to the racetrack have a good experience. And that is both people that are coming there to compete and people that are coming there to spectate. And, love the facility. There's a lot of great things about the facility, but let's just say the last 10 years or so, have let some of the maybe maintenance and some of the issues and some of the stuff go by a little bit, and that's one of the things that Kenny wants to come in and straighten up. He wants people to come in and go, wow, this is my facility, or this reflects on Kenny. And if you know Kenny at all, look at any of his race cars, look at any of his stuff. His stuff is nice, it's clean, it's shiny, it's fast, but it's more than just fast. It's nicely presented, and that's what he wants to do with the racetrack. He wants people to come to the racetrack, whether you're coming out there because you're a Saturday, weekend warrior guy, or whether you're a spectator that just comes out once or twice a year. He wants to make sure that you have the best experience you can at the racetrack, and part of that is just spiffing up the racetrack a little bit. When I was out there, and I don't know that this was done after Kenny bought it or potentially before, I assume it was done after, but the first time I drove out there here last week, the first thing I noticed is that both of the towers have been painted, cleaned up, updated. When you walk in, it's like, okay. I mean, looks like new buildings, and as well as I do, they've both been standing there a long time, and they both certainly could use a coat of paint. Well, they now have that, and they're working at enhancing. They're working at enhancing a lot of things out there. So more power to them.
Is there any truth to the rumor that they're going to build a giant Kenny Koretsky Colossus that stands over the 1320 mark?
I hope so.
Pulling a giant slot machine lever? Like, that's what I heard. Like, the rendering I heard was Koretsky standing over the finish line, and they're going kind of through his legs. It's a giant Colossus, guys, and Koretsky is like pulling the lever of a slot. That's kind of what my expectations.
I don't. I think somebody sounds like blew the story a little out of proportion. That's going to be the right lane scoreboard.
Oh,
when the car goes by, Kenny's arm will go like this, and then the numbers will come up, and it'll say 652 at 214 miles an hour.
You see what's happening? This is brainstorming, right? The construction consultant group of Reinhart and Castello, the Koretsky Colossus concept, just right out of the box. It's a good one. No, listen, we know those guys, and we know they love drag racing, right? That word passion, here it comes again. Kenny Koretsky has supported so many people behind the scenes that nobody would ever even know about it, WFO Radio included, giving us an opportunity to go up there and broadcast from the Reading Nationals in 2010. Definitely kept this show going for a little bit and gave us a lot of credibility. For him and Kyle and Kenny Jr. to take it over. Wow, so meaningful to everyone around there. They're going to have to put their spin on it. They will in time, but it kind of happened a little late in the going this year, so we're not really going to lean on them. I'm just kidding. But
I can tell you for a fact that one of the projects, and I don't know that it'll be done by the time the Nationals come back in September, but one of the projects that is front and center on the list of we need to get this done is improving the drainage. Because you're never going to stop it from raining in Pennsylvania. But what you need to do is make sure that when it does rain, that means your customers aren't all stuck in the mud in the parking lot someplace. That means that the water's got someplace to go instead of percolating back up or getting trapped under the racetrack, so that even when the sun comes out, we couldn't race because it rained for 4 hours before, and now the water's percolating back up. So one of the big projects that is going to be fairly early on the list of things to be tackled is to go through and straighten out some of the drainage, so that when it does rain, that once it stops raining, hopefully it doesn't mean that everybody automatically has a bad experience when it rains. The number of times when we've been there and the parking lots have just been bad, or the percolation's coming up through the racetrack, and when you're sitting there with the sun out and you can't race because of all of this stuff, and that's something that's going to be addressed fairly quickly. So I think that'll be a huge asset for the racetrack, because as I said, you're not going to make it stop raining in Pennsylvania. So what can you do so that once it does rain, you can get back to racing as quickly as possible, and you make sure that your spectators, your customers that have come in are going to be able to get their cars out, or even in the back 40 when the big events are here, that the rigs don't end up out there, in a swamp. You want to be able to get all the water out of there and keep your parking areas and keep your racing areas and keep everything, above water, as it were.
Well, that's exciting. There are things that may seem more sexy as improvements than drainage, but drainage is vital. Although I am disappointed they elected to not use my Chaos Dome concept that I submitted. The Chaos Dome roof covering, Koretsky covering, Dome of Chaos was also a potential name that I kind of submitted, but instead they're going to go the more traditional, improve the drainage route, which is fine by me, whatever they determine is best for the facility. But
why not Castle of Chaos?
All of the above. We're going to cover this thing. We could definitely come up with some
spires up on the corners and make it the Castle of Chaos.
Yeah, all of it, everything is open right now. It's a fresh, wide open opportunity for the Koretsky family to put their stamp on NHRA drag racing facilities, and I know they will. And I know they will. But also their bracket program and everything they do there, Kyle wants it to be a friendly place for the local racers also, not just the national event that comes once a year. Alan, great job as usual. Any final thoughts before we part ways and you get ready to head to Maple Grove this weekend?
Well, I'm already in Pennsylvania, so I don't have a long way to head from here. But no, just I hope everybody enjoys the long weekend. I hope everybody remembers why we have the holiday. And unlike you, I kind of miss when we used to race out in Topeka on this weekend. You could do the Monaco thing and then the Indy thing and then the NASCAR thing and then watch NHRA to close out your day. But I'm looking forward to a good race here this weekend, and hopefully Mother Nature will be kind to us. If it stays like it is today, and I mean it's like 72 degrees here today, so if it stays like this over the weekend, it should be plenty of fast, and looking forward to getting started. Exciting. I know you guys will be paying tribute to Johnny D out there as well, no doubt. We certainly will. Alan, great job as usual. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, and we'll talk next week as we get ready for the New England Nationals. All right, Joe, take care. All right, there he goes. The voice of the NHRA, Alan Reinhart, joins us each week right here on WFO Radio. Click subscribe, smash the bell. Those of you watching on YouTube, I appreciate you. Our next guest is Freddie Terza from VP Racing Fuels. We're going to learn a little bit about VP. It's going to be an interesting exercise to learn, and that's going to happen right after this. Joining us now from VP Racing Fuels, he is out there on the starting line at most NHRA national events. He's the one who tipped me off to the VP Lubricants project with Camry Caruso and her Pro Stock team over there at Titan Racing Engines, Mr. Freddie Turza. Joining us now. Freddie, welcome to WFO Radio. How are you?
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for joining us on the show. We've had countless conversations on the starting line. We've even done some talking at the Engine Performance Expo, but now we're bringing it to WFO, VP on board with the show, and a chance to learn. Before we do that, since some things are just so important, Johnny D, Big Mac, these guys, icons of the sport, and I know you work directly with John DiBartolomeo often and a lot, and maybe had something to share.
Yeah, and it's sad times right now for Johnny D and the family, and our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to Dottie and to Christina and Franklin. Joe, when I started at VP approximately 15 years ago, I'd say, I was introduced to Johnny D through Jim Kelly, who was the regional manager at the time and been, with VP for 25 years or whatever. But I knew Johnny D from years ago, back in Division I, and I knew that he was, Division I standout at the time. He hadn't been, introduced into the Hall of Fame yet, but Johnny D was a big name guy, kind of in stock, super stock, and around. You've seen him floating around with his camera. He was always with his camera and talking the talk and walking the walk, and always had something to say. Well, we got to be fairly close friends over the years. And, I was always looking for opportunities to have discussions and talk to him and bounce some things off of Johnny D. And it turned into quite the relationship as far as from a technical standpoint, where I would help him and he would help me. And one thing about Johnny D, he always got his technical articles down pretty damn good, and anything that he wrote or talked about, he was spot on most times. And man, I would applaud him for that. But I got a funny story, actually a couple of funny stories. A couple of years ago, we were out at Indy for the U.S. Nationals, and I was riding around in my golf cart, and I seen him pushing Johnny D Super Stalker back into the pit area. So I flew over there in my golf cart, and I said, "What happened?" He's like, "I don't know. It just shut off. It shut off." And so I immediately went to work, started taking the valve covers off of this thing, and looking at valve springs. And he said to me, he looked up at me. He's like, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I kind of gave him a dumb stare look. And he's like, "Oh, aren't I the idiot?" He said, right? And we both laughed a little bit. We kept working on this thing, and I said, "Well, let's pull this oil filter off and take a look and see," because I could smell that death smell in that thing. I knew something was seriously wrong. So we figured out that, hey, this motor's trashed pretty hard. So I said, "All right, Johnny, will you start working on getting the spare out, and I'll keep, unbolting this thing." And he said, "Well, I don't have a spare. I didn't bring a spare." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have a spare?" I said, "This is U.S. Nationals. How can you not have a spare motor?" And he's like, "I didn't think I need it." I put the tools down and got on my golf cart. I was that mad, and I just left, And I thought to myself, "Johnny, how could you come all the way out here to the U.S. Nationals and not have a spare motor?" We laughed about it after that. And he's like, "Yeah, you were really pissed off about that." And I said, "Yeah, I was." I said, "I was being very competitive at the time, and I can't believe you come all the way out here without a spare motor, So
you're ready for a thrash.
That story,
So on that note, I want to talk to you about VP. Obviously, super excited that VP has come on board with WFO, and I'm excited that you and I have gotten to talk about it. But let's talk about your background, which ties into that story. He goes, "You know what you're doing," and you give him a dumb look, and then he goes, "Oh my gosh," right? And so,
yeah.
Your background, it's Freddie the sales guy, Freddie the lubricants guy, Freddie the VP fuels guy. Now, how about Freddie the guy that worked with Bill Grumpy Jenkins? Let's talk about how you got started in this and kind of establish a career and a lifetime in this stuff before we start learning a little bit about oil and fuel additives, because you're someone who has lived the experience rather than learned the experience.
I have. I've been in this sport all my life, basically. I recall being 9 years old when my mom got my first subscription to Hot Rod Magazine. Okay, so it goes back that far. And I guess I was unique at the time, knowing back then that I was going to be somehow involved in racing and being an engine builder. And I set my goals extremely high, and through God's will and over the course of many trials and tribulations, I achieved that goal by getting myself in a position to be, a professional NASCAR engine builder. Previous to that, we had our own shop in Pennsylvania, and I dabbled around a lot in circle track, but I always grew up in Division I. So I was Division I kid. My step pop, Carol Hine, was a Division I standout, and I lived it and I breathed it, and I did everything that I possibly could I broke my neck to get to a race, right? Like as a kid. And because I was so passionate about learning and just watching guys like the Zulman and Vinny Barone and guys from, Long Island, New York would come down, and man, those guys were iconic names to me as a kid growing up. So, it was colorful. It was hard, right? Because we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have YouTube, and we didn't have any of that. So the only way that you could learn was either through a book or getting to know someone that knew more than you, right? So that's how the relationships, blossomed, I guess you would say. And whether it was Jenkins or Eddie Quay or Walt Wenny or any of those guys that were close by me in the Pennsylvania area. And I heard you and Ryan Reinhart were talking about my home track, Maple Grove, right? So I grew up there as a kid. So it was an evolution of time and hard work to get me down here to the Charlotte area. And once I made it down here through Terry Labonte, I spent 12 years as a NASCAR engine builder, and I would like to say that we were successful to win some championships, to win some iconic races, and do well. So that's how I guess progressed into this VP R&D guy through Steve Burns, who was the founder of the company. Back in early 2008, I guess it was, where he wanted to expand his R&D, and Jim Kelly reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, we've known you for a long time. We know your history. We think you'd be a good fit. How about looking into this and maybe taking a shot at it?" So I did, and here we are, approximately 15 years later. And I'm that guy you see out in the starting line a lot,
Which you know what, Freddie, and I think it's great. And for me, I am able to make positive and fun relationships with people in the moment and have no idea about like legendary careers they might have had, and then be pleasantly surprised about like, what? Really? Wow. That's awesome. So just because I got to know, give me a signature NASCAR victory that we might have watched or seen, or something that you like, that was a big one for my engines.
I have two of them. The one would be, so years ago when Dodge was, and you remember this, Dodge kind of jumped back into NASCAR with Ray Everham. And
yes,
I was basically an outsider engine builder, but I seen that there was a lot of potential with that engine package. It was called the R5 P7 head and engine. And I talked to Ray a little bit about it and got a little help through some parts. And I had known Ray for quite some time. He's from New Jersey. And so I guess I would like to say that we were the last independent race team without any Cup affiliation to win a race. That would have been with Justin Labonte at Chicago Land. I can't recall the year, but it was a big event because it still showed that the smaller teams still had a chance of winning a race. So that was an iconic one for me. And I guess the biggest event that I was a part of would have been the Daytona 500 with Kevin Harvick when I worked at Richard Childress Racing.
After Dale Sr. passed away, like that one?
Yes. Yeah. It would have been 2007, I guess it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
That was a pretty monumental accomplishment for all of us. It's not one guy, it's several guys it's the team that puts it all together, that makes it all happen in order to capture those types of victories, for sure.
That was the pass of Mark Martin, like late in the.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Poor Mark Martin, but congratulations to you. All right, let's talk a little VP Racing Fuels. And
sure.
You mentioned Mr. Burns. I think that's kind of an interesting story unto himself, a self-taught chemist. I've heard some stories through our engine performance expos, and folks can go and find that stuff out there on the YouTube channel, etc. But people relay stories of him pulling up in a trailer and out there in a hazmat suit, like mixing fuel and whatnot. But that was years ago. Now it's developed into many different fuel brands, very specific. I compare, based on what I've learned, to like a microbrew or craft brewery, different fuels and different oils that are designed specifically for the purpose that they are intended, as opposed to like a macro situation, like to compare to beer, Budweiser. Give me an overview on what's going on at VP, and then we're going to focus a little bit more on lubricants, which has come to the forefront recently.
So you're right by what you're saying. So you could consider like VP Racing Fuels like a microbrewery, right? Because everything we do is basically in smaller batches, and we have 80 different blends of fuel right now currently in our menu. And one of my jobs is to understand and know each and every one of those fuels and what they're used for. So that can be difficult at times, but over the years you start to capture that knowledge and have it in the back of your mind on where and how and when it should be used. So so we take pride in having those types of fuels for different applications, and it has evolved from everything that Burns started, like you said, with the horse trailer. And it's a great story because it's one of those where, how could this guy have done this? And now look, almost 50 years later, and what VP has become. It's a very good success story. He had a good team of people behind him over the course of the years, and some of them are still at VP currently. So we're a strong team for sure, and the knowledge and the resources are not there as big as like some of the bigger oil companies, but we have a good flavor of people that can participate and help and be a part of the next project, whatever that may be, right? So
well, C12, the first project is still going pretty well, right? Like that was the flagship fuel, and that is still one of still the flagship fuel from what I understand. But you have branched out, just thinking about some of the early customers, Ray Morrison, Warren Johnson,
Sure.
etc. But let's move into the lubricant phase, because that's what you're doing now. It was out there in Houston, I don't know, prior to first round on Sunday, where you told me Camry Caruso, VP Lubricants, she's the only one, new design, something we're doing for Titan Racing engines, and she goes on to the final round as the number one qualifier.
yes.
That was exciting to me, a great piece of news, but also exciting to me because I think that's what people want to know about, the battles and the technology and who's using this and who's using that, and it's not all spec.
So, okay, VP is no stranger to lubricants. So back 20 years ago, Burns was dabbling with oils. He needed something to do, so he started playing around with some different lubricants. And I was at Terry Labonte's engine shop at the time, and we actually tried some of them on the dyno, and we actually sat on the front row at Daytona for the Daytona 300 with the Slim Jim car with VP oil in the car, right? And we didn't get the pole, but we were outside front row. And so yeah, we're no strangers to lubricants, but there was a void, there was a missing part, and I'd say about 5, maybe 6 years ago is when the company hired Richard Glady, and he came over from Pengrade, and Richard had probably spent his entire career in the lubricants. He was the guy behind Garlett's when he had Kendall, back when we were kids growing up. So Richard comes to the company with a wealth of knowledge as far as oils go. And he put together several different viscosity oils for different applications, and from our full synthetic to our blends to our mineral based products. And we've got a really good selection. And now, part of my job is to help move that along and scurry that along. So when the opportunity came up with Mark Caruso, I went to Richard and I said, I've got a project that we can work on. I said, the only problem we're going to have is time. We need to get this done pretty quickly. And he's like, well, how quick? I said, I think we're going to have this product ready to race in 3 months. And he's like, whoa. And he's like, I think we can do this. So I immediately, contacted Mike Smith and Steve Johns over at Titan Racing Engines. And, Stevie and I go back a long ways. I'd say they have a lot of faith in me to take that oil and put that in one of their, pro stock engines like that. And within a very few short period of time, a few weeks, we have that oil on the racetrack. So, it's been one of those, it's a story, it's a good story. It's a feel-good story for a lot of different reasons. So, we're really proud of Camry, her team, Jim Yates, Mike Smith, everybody, Eric Latino for giving me the opportunity down there. It's been really good. So let's hope we can keep the momentum going into Epping, and hope that we can stay in the top half of the field in qualifying.
Well, it's going to be exciting to watch. So how does this translate to the racers out there in the audience who might be, looking for a race fuel, consistency wise, looking for lubricants, consistency wise, or even the people like I bought this at the auto parts store the other day, right? There is a whole, the brand name, there is just a sea of options, and the average person is going to go in there and their eyes are going to roll into the back of their head and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do. Right. That technology and all of that experience ultimately ends up as an option for the listener to put in their F-150.
And you're right. The biggest discouraging factor that I have is when we talk about oil or lubricants, people will say, well, I thought you guys just did race fuel. It's like, okay, but we've been working on this oil project for a very long time, and our marketing department has done a pretty damn good job of getting the word out there somehow. And I sit here thinking about it, scratching my head today, saying, how can we do a better job of getting the word out? And I got to give a shout out to David Barton, okay? Because, last year when, I came up with a program or what I wanted to do, I went to David and I said, look, I've got a very good 020 synthetic oil. I need you to run it. And he said, okay, let's run it. And, over the last few years, I think the success of Barton Racing Engines has been fantastic for us as a partner, because the success that he's had and some of his customer base, so it was big. It takes a lot of, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It takes a lot for those guys to do this, to jump ship, whoever they're with, and jump on with Freddie Turza and VP to do this.
Courage is the word. Courage.
I'm honored about it, right? Because it's been, we've had some good success, and we want to continue that. We want to keep growing and doing that. So,
absolutely. Oh, all right. You broke up for a second there, Freddie. Internet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's not you. It's the internet, the worldwide internet. Well, it's courage is what it is, because of all the money and the parts. And if it's a failure, there's a public humiliation that people don't realize, and people will snicker. But David is a good guy, and he's doing real well. He's got those showdown cars flying. And that courage, though, sometimes pays dividends. And you can't just do what everybody else is doing or what you've always done. If you, what is it? If you do what you've always done, you'll get the result that you've always gotten.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out a way to get ahead. So that is great. So what would you recommend to the bracket racers out there, the folks that are, all right, maybe they're not like David Barton and Titan Racing Engines trying to find the last horsepower, but they want a reliable fuel for their fast car out there on the weekends. Why is VP the choice that they should make? We got a fueling station right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I go over there, I'm able to fuel up. Not everybody has that option, but why is VP a good choice?
I think because we take pride in all of our products. Okay. It's not about a number or how many you sold. It's about the product itself, what has been put into the product as far as knowledge, and, the quality control continues to get stronger on each and every product that we manufacture. And over the course of time, I'd say that, we've made this transition from that little small boutique race fuel company into something that supports motorsports in many ways, from lubricants to coolants to additives to all types of products like that. So we continue to grow, and we sometimes it's at a rapid pace. Your average racer out there, we have something that will align with what you're currently utilizing as an engine oil, as a rear end grease. We just need to know, we just need to either have that conversation, or you take it upon yourself to say, oh, well, I'm just running a 2050 mineral-based oil. VP has that. So we have different grades of different products from grassroots all the way up to the professional categories to top fuel.
and Supercross and motocross, Eli Tomac. Just look at all the people that are using VP across the board. So
Yes.
It's great stuff. I'm going to put the link in the chat section, guys, for those that are interested. Obviously, this is a sponsor bit here on WFO, but this is, to me, it's also knowledge and information for our racers out there, and we do have them in our audience. To me, it's very interesting that just this, I was listening to a podcast recently with Elon Musk talking about how we won World War II. And one of the things he said was we had better fuel, right? Our planes, we had better fuel than they had. And nobody thinks about that. Better fuel makes all the difference. And that's true for lubricants and fuel additives as well.
Well, that's a fantastic story, Joe, because not very many people realize that there was a war going on as far as fuel development goes, right? This was huge back in World War II. It was a crisis, really. And I have a lot of information because I've studied that also. But it is quite the story if you go and read some of that. Actually, that's how Steve Burns started VP Fuel, was by going to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. and identifying that information that had been declassified, for the P-51 Mustang. And that's where he got his ideas about race fuel design was through the World War II era.
Wow. And amazing how many just elements come back through our sport of drag racing that have relationship to the unfortunate situation in World War II. But
Sure.
we are reaping the benefits to this day. Freddie, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Is there anything that we didn't touch on? And I'm sure there'll be other opportunities, but that you want to drive home with the folks out there before we get ready to go back drag racing or watch a lot of racing on Memorial Day weekend?
Well,
Something that people might not realize goes into it, a big part of our sport.
so I'll just let you know, Joe, tomorrow afternoon, I head overseas to England. Is the first leg of the FIA at Santa Pod Drag Racing. So it's one of their huge, let's not call it a national event, but it's a huge event, right? There you go. There you got it. So I will be over there for the entire weekend and come home early Monday morning. So we're looking forward to our European friends and getting to see them. I haven't been there since before pre-COVID, so it'll be interesting to get caught up on some of the racing that's going on throughout Europe in drag racing.
That's great. That is great. I love our folks over there.
Okay.
I've got like Colin Theobald, who is the announcer. Be sure to go and say hello and bust in and tell him that you bring wishes from the States.
I sure will. Yeah.
He said to do that, and sending you as an emissary. But that's what has been so exciting about this project, right? Using the internet, because the Australian drag racing fans are now closer to us than ever before, and we to them. The folks in Europe and the Middle East, everything they're doing, we can watch what they're doing in real time. They're streaming their events now, and we are streaming our events. And so the drag racing community, once, like you said at the start of this interview, you had to work so hard just to get one piece of information.
Yeah.
Now there's plenty of information. There's more than you could ever sort through. You've got to be very particular about which information you go to. But have fun over there. Good luck. We'll miss you on this side, but
Okay.
make the most of it over there. And we'll catch up and debrief when you get back.
We'll catch everyone in Epping, and everyone have a good weekend, and remember what it's all about.
Absolutely. Freddie, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for joining us here on
Thanks, Joe.
WFO Radio.
Thanks for
Take care.
having me. Yep.
There he goes, Freddie Turza from VP Racing Fuel. Thank you, Freddie. Appreciate you. How about that? And there's so much more to learn. Obviously, we learned a lot at the Engine Performance Expo, and standing on the starting line is where I learned the most from Freddie Terza. Put your comments in the comment section, guys. Let's see what you have to say at the conclusion of this WFO Radio episode. Remember, we got Erica Enders tomorrow, and we've got Jim Epler going to be joining us on the show, talking a little bit about Phillips Connect. Then on Thursday, let me tell you what is happening on Thursday. Thursday, we're going to delve into the Big Mac Memorial a little more deeply. And I have a lineup of guests that I am working on who each worked directly with Dave McClelland and can speak in depth about his contribution to drag racing. and hopefully tell some great stories, which is really what it's all about. And I just want to bring people together and pay our respects on WFO Radio the best we can. So that'll be Thursday, probably 11 a.m. We're kind of working in backwards order here. 1 o'clock on Tuesday, 12 o'clock on Wednesday, 11 o'clock on Thursday, as we get ready for the Memorial Day weekend. But put your comments in the comment section, and I'm going to tell you about the people who make it possible for me to go WFO. And we'll just start with, remember, vpracingfuels.com. Go to the website. I put it up in the chat section. Check out the website. A whole host of products that you can support the show by checking out. Total Seal Piston Rings, the leader in ring seal technology, totalseal.com, 4 o'clock. We got a new episode of Hidden Horsepower. We're going to be recording. Watch for it. Subscribe to the feed, totalseal.com, for all your ring seal questions. They are clearly the leader in the industry. PhillipsConnect.com. We'll learn a little bit more about Phillips tomorrow with Jim Epler, first over 300 in a funny car. He was going to hire Erica Enders to drive his funny car. And also we're having Erica Enders on the show. How great is that going to be? Starting at 12 noon. Can't wait to talk to Epler. But it's really about keeping safe out there on the highways with all these trucks and rigs going back and forth. You got to keep the trucks safe. You got to keep the loads safe and the people all around them. But appreciate all those folks. FTI Performance Transmissions and Torque Converters. These guys. It's funny. You think about VP. They've been around for a long time. You think about FTI. Not so long. Just over 10 years. But Greg Samuel and his team have skyrocketed to be an industry leader. They partnered with the right racers. They demonstrated their abilities, and they have won just about everything you can win. $1 million bracket races, NHRA national events, U.S. nationals, top to bottom, FTI Performance Transmissions. They're located in Florida. They're owned by Paul Lee and big supporters of WFO Radio, and we really appreciate those guys and what they are capable of doing. Plus, samtech.edu. You know, who's the next generation of Freddie Turzas? Who's the next generation of engine builders, of crew chiefs, of machinists, of EFI tuners, of CNC programmers? Like, how's that all going to happen? We need those generations of kids that are coming up to take a liking and an interest and get educated. And the way to do it isn't to hang out under the shade tree anymore. It's to go to a place like samtech.edu, talk to the Massengill family, Brian in particular, tell them you heard about it on WFO Radio. Or maybe you just want to have some fun on the racetrack like me. Not to diminish all the serious stuff we just talked about it. But yeah, I love the idea of driving a dragster, and you can too. FrankHawley.com. They can set up a course. You can do a day tour with them. You can set up a race with them. And they travel around the country. So go to FrankHawley.com, click on Dragster Adventure, and check it out. For $399, you have an experience that lasts a lifetime. And then there's Marvin Rodak. You see me raising and doing the Castello workout, right? Like curls, coffee curls, like coffee mug up, coffee mug down, a little Rodax exercise. 817-924-6821. Every day starts with Rodax coffee, unless I'm on the road, and those days are inferior. Simple as that. Plus, tools and tips and information for grilling, great recipes on the website, and hot sauces and spice rubs that are unbelievable. Plus, our Patreons. These are the VIP listener squad. We've been posting the Ignition Show on YouTube only. So if you're watching on the book or Twitter or any of those places, Twitch, which nobody watches on, but we still broadcast it there, check out the YouTube channel. I'm putting the video of the Ignition Show only on YouTube to force you to go there, of course. That's the reason. In the end, we should all be on YouTube always, right? But you can see the Patreons, and they love it. They're having a good time. They're behind the scenes. They're getting all kinds of information and things going on in the WFO universe. But most importantly, they're just like one of our sponsors. This is a group of individuals that is crowdfunding WFO with a couple of bucks a month. So I can pay my internet bills or get a sign made or go buy some VP at the auto parts store. It's all a big synergy. But we try to make it worth their while with a little swag. And we're going to have a couple of WFO Patreon meetups this year, one in Indy and one at Vegas too, to build the community around WFO Radio. And not that you guys, the regular listeners, aren't in the community, but the Patreons, they get the key to the secret back door. You know, the secret backdoor speakeasy where all the really good stuff is going on. I don't want to oversell it. It's not that great, honestly. It's not that great. All right, comments in the comments section. There's not a lot of them. This one, Wayne, all caps. Come on, Wayne. All caps? No, I appreciate it. Yo, Alan, BF, just left my house. Hope to see you at the Grove this weekend. Wayne, Wayne, what kind of language are you speaking, man? With the periods and the caps. And it's just too much. Wayne, what are you doing, Wayne? The Williams brothers going to be over there at Santa Pod. We love those guys when they come over for Indy. Keith Kaufman says, join Patreon. It's well worth it. Keith is like one of our greatest endorsers up there. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you greatly, and thank you for supporting the show. All right, no other comments, and that works for me. I'm out of here. Thanks to Freddie Turza. Worked with Bill Grumpy Jenkins. There's probably a bunch of stories. It wasn't about Freddie. It's about VP Racing Fuels. But there's a million stories there. No doubt. But the guy was, working at Richard Childress Racing when Harvick won the Daytona 500, and he's now out there on the starting line at NHRA Nationals, helping things behind the scenes. Lonnie, great show as always. Thank you. Remember, the rest of the week and last week and the week before, if you're watching your first ever episode of WFO Radio, that's great. Welcome. Share the show. That's the way we do it. This one was kind of interesting in that we're talking about Big Mac and talking about Johnny D, and we're trying to be uplifting at all times, but sometimes it's just tough. And our drag racing family lost two, icons. And John DiBartolomeo, like to use him in the same sentence as Dave McClelland, I can make a case for it. All the magazines that he edited, all the magazines, all the shots, all the tech stories, a Lucas Oil Series drag racer through and through, and then Big Mac, what he did for drag racing, SEMA Hall of Fame member. You just can't state it. You can't overstate it. And again, a deity, a god of broadcasting. And people would talk about Howard Cosell and Al Michaels and all the greats from back in the day, Keith Jackson, and they are, and they were. Big Mac loved drag racing, and that's why he did it. And that's why he was here, because of his passion for drag racing. And, I think we try to all carry a little part of what he did. The gravitas of the voice just cannot be duplicated. And now to think that, he and Steve Evans, they're up there, together. Amazing stuff. Don't forget to tune in on Wednesday and Thursday. We're going to have some great stuff for you, I think. Join us. Thanks to Freddie. Thanks to Alan. We'll see you next time right here on WFO Radio.